Michael had always lived on the edge of society, a homeless man with no roots, no family, and no purpose. His life had become a blur of forgotten days, cold nights, and the endless struggle for survival. Yet one fateful moment changed everything. 20 years ago, on a busy street corner, he had saved a little girl from a speeding car, a split-second decision that altered the course of both their lives forever. For years, Michael lived in the shadows, never expecting anything in return. The city moved on, and the faces he helped were just memories fading into the past. He never knew the little girl he had saved grew up with a debt of gratitude that would shape her future in unimaginable ways. Then, one chilly afternoon, fate brought them together again. She was no longer a child but a woman, successful and driven, and she had come to repay the kindness he had shown her all those years ago. But the way she planned to repay him was something Michael could never have predicted. A place, a legacy, and a life-changing revelation awaited him, one that would leave him speechless. It was a cold, gray morning when Michael sat on the curb, his breath visible in the frigid air. His coat, threadbare and worn, offered little protection from the biting wind. People rushed by, heads down, absorbed in their own busy lives, barely noticing him. Michael was used to it. He had become invisible to the world, a ghost wandering through the city, forgotten by time. As he reached for the few coins in his pocket, a sudden scream pierced the air. Michael snapped his head up just in time to see a little girl, no older than 5, stepping off the sidewalk and into the path of an oncoming car. The driver was speeding, unaware of the child in the street. Panic surged through Michael, but there was no time to think. Without hesitating, he lunged forward, grabbing the girl and yanking her out of harm's way. The world seemed to slow as he felt the sharp impact of the car's side mirror against his leg, sending him crashing to the ground. Pain shot through his body, but the child was safe. As the world spun around him, Michael lay on the cold pavement, his breath ragged, knowing he had done something that would change both their lives forever. The world blurred around Michael as he lay in the hospital bed, his leg in a cast, his body aching. The sharp smell of antiseptic mixed with the dull thrum of hospital lights above him. The doctors had done their job, but there was no fanfare, no one to thank him for the life he'd saved. He wasn't a hero. He was just a man who had been in the right place at the right time, and the world moved on, oblivious to his sacrifice. Days turned into weeks, and Michael drifted in and out of consciousness. He had no memory of the accident, only vague flashes of a little girl's face, her frightened eyes as he pulled her from danger. But no one had come to visit him, no family or friends, and he never saw the girl again. Eventually, the hospital released him, and Michael returned to the streets, his leg healing, but his spirit still broken. He resumed his place on the sidewalk, just another face in the crowd. The city, with its endless rush, didn't stop for him. Years passed, and the memory of that day faded, like so many others. Michael didn't expect recognition. He wasn't looking for anything in return. All he had was the quiet knowledge that, for a moment, he had mattered. Michael was trudging through the alleyway, his worn shoes scraping against the cracked pavement. The day had been like any other, the usual routine of searching for scraps, trying to stay warm, and hoping for a moment of kindness from the world. He didn't expect much, and yet, that's when it happened. A soft voice cut through the noise of the street. "Michael." He turned, confusion rising in his chest. A woman stood before him, her eyes focused on him with an intensity that made his heart race. She was dressed neatly in a professional suit, her hair carefully styled, so different from the faces he was used to seeing. But there was something familiar about her. She took a step closer. "Do you remember me?" Michael blinked, trying to place her. There were too many faces in his life, too many forgotten moments. But as he looked deeper into her eyes, something clicked. His heart skipped a beat. You're the little girl," he stammered. "The one I—" "Yes," she interrupted, her voice soft but filled with emotion. "You saved me." Michael's throat tightened as memories from that fateful day flooded back. She was alive because of him, but now, here she was, standing in front of him, all grown up. "I never forgot," she said, her voice barely a whisper. The woman's gaze never left Michael as she spoke, her voice steady yet full of meaning. "I've been wanting to thank you for what you did all those years ago," she said, her words hanging in the cold air between them. Michael felt a mix of emotions, surprise, confusion, and a strange warmth. After all this time, someone had remembered him. He had never expected anything in return, but here she was, offering him something he hadn't even known he needed: recognition. "You don't have to thank me," Michael muttered, his voice rough from years of neglect. "I just did what anyone would do." The woman smiled, but there was a knowing glint in her eyes. "You're wrong. Not everyone would have acted like you did." She paused for a moment, as if weighing her words. "In fact, I need to show you something. Something that might change the way you see things." Michael frowned, unsure of where this was going. She didn't look like someone who'd offer a simple thank you. There was something more to her words. "Come with me," she said, offering him her hand. Unsure, Michael took it, wondering where this strange encounter would lead. The bustling streets felt different as he followed her, his heart beating faster with every step. The city blurred around Michael as they walked, the familiar sights now taking on a new quality. He couldn't help but wonder what was happening, why this woman, this little girl he saved, was leading him somewhere. She had insisted that he follow her, though he still had no idea where they were going. After a few blocks, they turned into a quiet street he'd never noticed before. The buildings were taller, the air cleaner. It was like a different world, hidden in plain sight. She led him through a gate, and Michael couldn't believe his eyes when they stepped onto the property beyond. It was a beautiful, well-kept garden surrounded by a luxurious house, nothing like the crumbling buildings and noisy streets he was used to. There were flowers everywhere, their colors vibrant and rich, and the peaceful sound of birds chirping filled the air. He looked around, stunned by the stark contrast to the world he knew. "This is your place?" Michael asked, still trying to process it. The woman smiled, nodding. "Yes, I've been lucky enough to do well in life, but I never forgot the man who saved me." She walked over to a small bench in the garden and motioned for him to sit. "This is where I wanted to bring you," she said, her eyes full of sincerity. Michael sat, still in shock, as she continued. "This is just the beginning." As Michael sat on the bench, the weight of the moment pressed down on him. He looked around at the peaceful garden, the bright flowers, and the serene atmosphere that felt so foreign to him. He had never imagined such a place existed, let alone that he would find himself here, in the company of the woman he saved all those years ago. She sat beside him, her expression thoughtful, as if she were preparing to reveal something important. "Michael," she began, her voice steady but gentle, "there's something I need to tell you, something that I've carried with me for a long time." Michael looked at her, unsure of what to expect. Her presence, calm and composed, had given him a sense of hope he hadn't felt in years, but now, her serious tone made his heart race. What could she possibly say? "You saved my life," she continued, her voice thick with emotion. "But it wasn't just a physical rescue. You saved me from a path I was on, one that could have destroyed me. I was on my way to being lost, and your act of kindness, it changed everything." Michael felt a lump form in his throat. He hadn't realized the depth of his impact. He had simply acted on instinct, but now her words were beginning to shape a new understanding of that day. The words hung in the air, and Michael's heart seemed to skip a beat. He had never considered the impact of his actions beyond the moment, beyond the rush of adrenaline and the desperate need to pull that child out of harm's way. But now, as the woman beside him spoke, he realized just how much that single moment had shaped her life. "I was lost," she continued, her eyes softening. "I came from a broken home, always searching for something to fill the emptiness. That day, I was on my way to a bad place. I didn't know it then, but your act of kindness stopped me from making choices that could have ruined my future." Michael looked at her, speechless. She had been so young, yet the weight of what she was saying felt immense. She had survived because of him, but what she had become, the woman sitting beside him now, was a reflection of her own strength and the chance she had been given. "I owe you more than words can say," she whispered. "You gave me the chance to become who I am today." Tears welled in Michael's eyes as he understood. It wasn't just the girl he had saved that day. It was her future, her happiness. And now, she was here to offer him something in return. A life-altering gesture that would change his world forever. The silence between them was thick, but it wasn't uncomfortable. Michael sat, absorbing the weight of her words, his mind struggling to comprehend everything. The life he had lived on the streets, the years of feeling invisible, none of that seemed to matter here, in this quiet, beautiful garden. It felt as though he had been transported into another world, one where his past didn't define him. The woman, now with a gentle but determined look on her face, took a deep breath. "There's one last thing I want to show you, Michael. One last gift." She reached into her purse and pulled out a folded envelope, handing it to him. Michael's hands trembled slightly as he opened it. Inside was a letter, along with a check, an amount that seemed impossible for someone like him to even imagine. His eyes widened, but it wasn't the money that hit him hardest. It was the words she had written in the letter. This is to help you start over. A chance to rewrite your story. No more surviving. You deserve to live, Michael. Tears blurred his vision as he looked at her. She wasn't just offering him money. She was offering him the possibility of a future, one where he didn't have to go unnoticed, one where he could finally matter. For the first time in years, Michael smiled, knowing his life had truly changed. If Michael's journey has inspired you, don't forget to like this video and share it with someone who needs a reminder that small acts of kindness can change lives. Subscribe to the channel for more stories that will touch your heart and leave a comment below. What would you do if you were given a second chance at life?